You're tuned in to Shake, Rattle, and Goal, the official podcast of your Springfield Thunderbirds.
Becca's there on the backhand, scoring the save, rebound in the crease, they score!
Hosted by Matt Baker and Steve Forney. A show that's everything Springfield hockey, with interviews including players, coaches, and staff.
The Springfield Indians repeat as the Calder Cup champions.
Listen to this podcast on all major streaming platforms and wherever you download podcasts.
In his first year at the helm, Kevin McDonald and Drew Bannister have the Teamers in the Calder Cup Finals.
Watch the podcast on the official Shake, Rattle, and Goal YouTube page at SRG Podcast.
And now, here are your hosts, Matt Baker and Steve Forney.
And this episode number 22 of Season 2 of the Shake, Rattle, and Goal podcast is proudly brought to you by our friends at White Lion Brewing in Amherst and in downtown Springfield, by our friends at Brewcade in Agawam, and by the fine folks at Landscaping That Fits. Hit them up at 413-847-0338. Alongside Matt Baker, I am Steve Forney, and we got a doozy here. This is a special episode for everybody listening here in the 413 and in the 314, as we are joined by our friends at the Blues Fan Forum podcast. Everybody say hi to Jacob and Dakota. How are you, fellas?
Good. How are you, Steve and Matt? Thanks to you guys so much for having us on.
Oh, our pleasure. Yeah. Our pleasure. So
happy to have you.
Yeah, we'll do a nice little hour here of all things that are Blues and Thunderbirds, and I guess we'll start with you fellas and just, trade deadlines right around the corner. Everybody, I don't know, maybe they were sellers there a month ago. Now it seems like they're really getting some momentum going here and maybe a playoff push. Or are we still in sell mode? What's the vibe up there from you guys?
That's a hard one. And it was the same thing last year. Last year, right around this time, we won a couple games where we're winning more than we lost. And then it's like, what do you do? It also seems like Braden Shen is the big name of who we're going to trade. But there's also that's a massive contract attached to that. So I'm surprised at how much action that seems to be getting on the trade rumors. In a weird way, I wouldn't be surprised if we do nothing, but I also won't be surprised if we trade Shen. So that's probably not much of an answer.
What are you guys kind of looking for? Like, are you talking picks and prospects? Are you looking for roster players? Like, what's the vibe on what the return could be?
It's going to be the age range that Doug is looking for. He's still trying to fit that, I believe, 24 to 26 age range to kind of fit with Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. Maybe even go to the lower end so it kind of fits in with Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg now. But if he can get an NHL-ready player, maybe an NHL younger-ready player, or a decent prospect plus picks, so somewhere in that range. They're not going to be looking for take our 33-year-old Braden Shen and we'll take your 30-year-old somebody else.
Right.
So yeah, I think younger.
I think the way that the Blues have played here lately, coming out of the Four Nations, I mean, you think, are we sellers? Are we buyers? And I still think that that question still remains undefeated in the Blues organization because no one knows. Like, no one knows what Armstrong's going to do. Obviously, we hear the trade rumors of Shen and Bennington, but like, are those actually ever going to come to fruition? Like, are we going to sit in our hands like we did last season? And I'm sure you guys have a big question too, is like, okay, who's coming up to the big roster if somebody takes a Shen or even a Bennington, and who are we losing? Who are we giving up? And are you going to see some guys on the lower level, such as the AHL? Are they going to disappear at the trade deadline for, maybe another roster spot? Who knows?
And you don't always have to necessarily be a buyer or a seller. You can part with a guy like Shen and be all right. I mean, again, like you said, as long as you're getting somebody that's an NHL caliber, or, you're replacing that person with somebody that can ball. And, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but, Dalibor Dvorsky playing great. I'm just not sure he's ready. But one of the things Matt and I discussed, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, was Nikita Alexandrov. And when Bolduc was sent down for the Four Nations, he came down here, no goals, no assists, immediately got called back up. And we knew that was the plan. Meanwhile, Alexandrov's a better than a point per game player the entire season. And I don't know, I'm looking at it from your perspective, like, well, let's give this guy another crack. I know it wasn't the best showing last year, but this kid's playing some mega hockey right now. And he is kind of right in that age range you're looking for, Jacob.
Yeah, I can confirm that you guys talked about that last podcast around the 33-minute mark, because I was literally just listening to that before I got on here. But yeah, Nikita Alexandrov having a great season down there. It seems like the Blues are locked into, especially with the way they're playing recently, locked into they haven't changed the lines, and I think the 4 games that we've won. So it's kind of call Nikita up and possibly let him rotate in for Nathan Walker or Radek Faksa on the 4th line, or keep letting him kind of dominate in the AHL like he is. And if I'm Nikita Alexandrov, I'd probably rather play in Springfield and keep playing first line minutes and doing what I'm doing than get called up and play 4th line minutes. I wouldn't be surprised, though. Radek Faksa seems to be the easiest player for the Blues to trade. He's on a 1-year deal. He's got the veteran presence that teams are going to be looking for as far as forward depth. It's going to cost teams a 5th or 6th round pick, so nothing anyone's going to be upset about. So when he gets traded, which is, again, most likely going to happen, maybe that's when Nikita gets called up, and now he's got a full-time spot on the roster, even though it might be 4th line center.
But I think
sorry, go ahead, Dakota. Go ahead.
I think going into next year, you got to think there's got to be a couple of guys in the AHL that are going to have a primary roster spot in the NHL, just based off of a lot of the 1-year deals that are kind of emptying off at the end of the year. Plus, Jacob's mentioned this a couple of times on our podcast. The cap room is constantly increasing next year. So it's like, okay, if they do take a guy like a Braden Shen, you've got money to give, plus you've got a roster spot or 2 or 3. When we talk about Jimmy Snuggerud, is he going to stay with the St. Louis Blues at the end of the year? Are we going to take a guy like a Dalibor Dvorsky or even an Otto Stenberg? Because, I mean, we saw how well he played in the juniors. We'd love to take the young guys and not have to spend so much at the trade deadline. Let's use our farm system. Let's use that farm club, kind of like develop those rookie players to now that, they're NHL ready.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. And we'll get into the guys here in a minute. One more guy I want to talk about with you. I saw Tyler Tucker just had a 2-year extension. I haven't been able to find, was that a 1-way or a 2-way deal?
I haven't looked into it, but I would imagine it was a 1-way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would be my assumption. Yeah, in my mind, as soon as I read that, I was like, sweet, Tyler Tucker just signed 2 years to be the 7th defenseman for the Blues for the next 2 years.
Steve and I had that same conversation too. It's just like, really? And what's your vibe on Kessel? I mean, I've noticed Kessel's kind of sliding into some bad habits, at least this past weekend down here. It hasn't been too costly with some silly turnovers, but he played well up in St. Louis for you at the beginning of the year and the end of last year. Any vibe on him? Or is he going to be your 8th defenseman?
Yeah, I haven't heard really anything about him since he's gone down. At the beginning of the year, it was all, he's technically the 3rd best right-handed defenseman in the roster in the organization. So you just kind of penciled him in for that right defense on the 3rd line. But the Blues are doing well, and I guess okay with playing 2 lefties, mostly on the 3rd line with Suter, and then either throwing in Leddy or throwing in Tucker. And it's been doing okay. So they must have more faith in Leddy and Tucker than they do in Kessel coming up.
Just piggybacking on that, let me ask you guys this. If you were making a team tomorrow and your options were Scott Perunovich or Tyler Tucker, who are you taking?
Tyler Tucker all the way. And I believe that's kind of, he plays the Blues system. I know it sounds kind of like a loaded statement or a loaded answer, but I think if you were to take Scotty P, obviously he's won a Hobey Baker, but you're not getting what you expected out of a Hobey Baker winner. I mean, we could throw in Cale Makar. We've done it plenty of times on our podcast. But then you bring Tyler Tucker, which I think he's a gritty 3rd line defenseman. He gets in there, throws the body around. He makes the first line guys work a lot harder to get that puck. And I think that's something that you kind of want as a 3rd line D, is somebody who grits out things. We're not looking for offensive production out of you. If you do, great. Thanks for, offering, offensive ability, but we want somebody who constantly puts in that work down low, makes the guys work a lot harder to get that puck, and then boom, they're looking for a shift. And so I think that's kind of what the Blues really liked of Tucker. I think that's why he stayed up here as long as he has.
Yeah.
And I just think he plays that Jim Montgomery Blues hockey that he's kind of ingrained in those guys now, is to play the Blues way, whatever that may be.
Interesting.
Nice.
Real quick, you mentioned it. We are in Bruins country. I am sort of laughing at the Bruins for the way that they are operating, and I'm curious your thoughts on Jim Montgomery so far. I thought that firing him for the Bruins was so dumb. It was the inmates basically running the asylum. I think Bruins fans are ready for a clean house here with Sweeney and Neely and the stiff that is Joe Sacco as at head coach. How are things with our old pal Monty? I loved him. I wish he was still in Bruins territory.
I'll say he gives us a lot more Craig Berube feel than, just the ability to interact with the players and seem to be a lot more outgoing, especially during his interviews. Like when Drew Bannister was here, he was very plain in the answers that he gave. And it was just kind of like, is this the way that you are in the locker room? And it really questioned, there's no doubt in my mind that Drew Bannister is probably a really good X's and O's guy and knows hockey and all that. But just how did you interact with the players when this is the way that you interact with the media? Jim Montgomery has come in, and for a couple games, he was setting like musical themes to him. And he's like, like some sort of rock song. He goes, this is what we're doing tonight. And then it became the theme of that night, and they played it at the Enterprise Center. So just a lot more, seems to be outgoing and a lot more, just more people friendly, which in my mind makes you feel like you get along with your players a little bit better.
I think hockey's built off of emotion too. So if your head coach is going in there like a Drew Bannister, and this is not like a Drew Bannister hate train that I'm riding, but like if you go in there in the locker room and your job is to get the guys going and add that spark. And I think that's what Jim Montgomery did when he first came in, was added that spark, kind of got the boys going, got them encouraged to play, Blues hockey. Like I keep mentioning all this time is, Jim Montgomery kind of took this role as like he had wanted it. He'd seeked it out as a former Blues, assistant coach or whatever he was. He played for the Blues at some point. He kind of was like, I know what it takes to be a Blue. I have this, I've envisioned this. This is what I want you guys to do as a Blue. And so he kind of just took the reins and ran with it. I do think his statistics as a Blues head coach are kind of jaded because I think he had to move in some of his systems that Drew Bannister kind of had as a head coach. But I think now the Blues have kind of taken those systems and kind of ran with it. I think the Blues in the last 6 games have played a different brand of hockey than they did the first start of the season. So I think it's going in the right direction.
Matt, you want to give him a little bit of the trickle down effect that you were talking about with the defensive structure here in Springfield once Montgomery took over? We did notice a little bit of a shift down here.
Yeah, well, it seemed like here in Springfield, from a team defensive standpoint, it was keep things at the perimeter, keep things out of that sort of danger slot zone, let them shoot, and then get to the puck, clear the puck, hustle in the corners, and the Thunderbirds right now are I don't have the number exactly, but give up the most shots on a per game basis in the entire AHL. We had an opportunity. It's extremely frustrating.
You're talking about like 40 shots a game.
Yes,
it's infuriating, and it's not just a one-off. Like it's every game. And we had an opportunity to talk to Steve Konowalchuk, the head coach for the Thunderbirds at the beginning of the year. And he kind of said, yeah, we kind of are using Banny's defensive scheme. I did notice shortly after Montgomery took over, it just seemed like they were playing a little bit tighter. They kind of have fallen back into bad habits from the beginning of the year. But it's put our goaltending, Colton Ellis, Vadim Zarenko, who, in my opinion, are if as a Blues, I don't know how much you're following our goalies, but you guys are in good shape.
Yeah.
It puts so much stress on them every single period. I know some goaltenders like that. They want to stay busy, but it's constant peppering. And I don't know. I feel like Montgomery is kind of, I don't know what your take is from a Blues team defensive standpoint, but the structure, what they're trying to accomplish defensively. And I mean, I think the game last night, they actually outshot Columbus by quite a bit, if I'm not mistaken. I know it didn't, right? Was it Columbus that they played last night?
The Blues played Dallas.
Dallas, I'm sorry. But so how are the Blues sort of playing their team defense? Can you tell a difference between a Monty team defense and Drew Bannister?
I mean, well, my thing is, you can talk about the Blues defense till the cows come home, because I think it's definitely been interchangeable depending on if it was Bannister behind the bench or if it was Montgomery. But what the Blues' job and the identity of the defensive core, I think, has definitely changed. And when I say that, you could talk to the defensemen after the game, and they're talking about how they're playing the defense. When you talked during the Bannister era, they didn't know what they were doing, because I think if you had talked to Joel Hofer and Jordan Binnington, they were seeing pucks left and right. It didn't matter if it was behind the net, if it was at center ice. There was nobody standing in front of the goaltender, and now you can see that presence in front of the net. Everybody's trying to do their job to clear the pucks, or at least get in lanes, or they're shot blocking. Everybody from top to bottom is blocking shots. They're seeing a lot less rubber, which again, I do think that goaltenders enjoy seeing rubber. It keeps them in the game, keeps them active. But if you're doing your job as a defensive core, your goaltender's not going to see 50 pucks a game, which is great. The less rubber they see, less time for a puck to squeak on by. And, they talked to Colton Parayko, I think it was like 2 or 3 games ago. And he was like, no, like, we're active with our sticks. We're getting the pucks down low. Like, we're constantly exiting the O-zone, our D-zone, as quick as we possibly can. And they talked about even Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer, how active they are behind, how often they're touching the puck behind the net. If their puck gets dumped down low, they're constantly getting out of the net. They're trying to play it back up to the defenseman. They're trying to exit the zone as quick as possible. So I do think it's kind of a long-winded answer. I do think the defensive core has changed their identity of what they're doing in front of the net. And I think it's seen, or at least we've seen in the last 6 games, how well they've played.
I'll add, it's been a lot of, I think offense is the best defense. And I think you guys mentioned part of giving up the 40 goals is you guys are getting the puck in the offensive zone and being one and done and just kind of heading back the other way. And the Blues have done a pretty good job of not doing that. The defense has actually been very active in the offensive zone, where in the past it was a lot of, bend, don't break. So we'll just kind of let them carry it out. But now it's like, if it's on the boards, Parayko's going in, or whoever, Cam Fowler, whoever it is, they're pinching and keeping the puck in the zone. And when they pinch, one of the forwards is coming back and rotating back. So it allows that pinch to happen because you still have 2 guys back. So the defense being more active in the offensive zone is actually giving us more offensive time and giving us less, time that we have to worry about getting shots. And then the skating ability of our defense is, I think, some of the best in the NHL. When you're talking about Parayko, Nick Leddy, Philip Broberg, even Cam Fowler, like those are 4 of some of the best skaters as far as defensemen. Their ability to just receive a puck and then skate it out if they need to it makes breakouts and, making sure the other team goes one and done a lot more often than we do.
Yeah, I like to call it making a line change just so you can go play more defense.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
which happens a lot here in Springfield, unfortunately. But again, I think that's becoming more rare, as the season goes on. And what you're talking about sounds exactly like what the Bruins did when they were breaking regular season records. Was that consistency and that defense is a 5-man unit, knowing if somebody's pinching that the forward has to get back, or being able to handle the puck behind the net. It seems like Monty just kind of brought over the exact same thing. So, Hey, it worked out for the Bruins for the most part. It wasn't his fault they couldn't win the playoffs. It was the players, as far as
right.
So, but well, let's see what else. What else do we have here for from a Blues perspective? I am curious about the goaltending situation. We do talk about Binnington and possibly being on the trade block. What are the expectations for a Joel Hofer, even a Vadim Zarenko, even a Colton Ellis? Like, are you guys looking at next year, a couple years away? Is the Binnington contract starting to kind of bog things down a little bit? What is the general feel for Jordan Binnington at this stage of the season in his career?
I'll attack this one first. I think the only reason that Binnington trade rumors are as high as they are is because of the Four Nations tournament. This is, I mean, after 2019, he wins the Stanley Cup. You're not trading a Stanley Cup goaltender, right? That's never happening. But now that we're years removed from that, and now he's won the Four Nations tournament with Canada, this is probably the highest his trade value will ever be. Like, I don't think it's just going to be downhill from here. So your options are just capitalize on that, or see if we can return to 2019 Binnington. He's been good, and you could see now in the Four Nations tournament that he still has the ability to show up in big games. I'm going to kind of take this a little from the Boston perspective. Is I don't think they trade Jordan Binnington unless they re-sign Joel Hofer, because he's a restricted free agent this year. And I think it kind of goes to the Jeremy Swayman and Ullmark, and they traded Ullmark before signing Jeremy Swayman, and then Jeremy Swayman's like, I have all the leverage now. And so I think hopefully the Blues have that same idea. So if you see a Joel Hofer signing in the next few days, that might raise some red flags and be like, okay, Binnington might be on the move. But if you don't see a Joel Hofer signing, I don't think Binnington gets traded.
Well, that's my thing is I wanted to double back on is like, well, if you invest all your money into Jordan Binnington as your number one, then it just makes sense to put Hofer on the block, because I think Hofer could easily be an NHL starter. Yes, do we have a really decent 1-2 tandem? But also I kind of looked at the AHL as Colton Ellis and Vadim Zarenko could easily slot in as a backup to Jordan Binnington or even a Joel Hofer. I think when I watched them when they practiced before the season, before they kind of took their respected spots in the AHL, I was like, damn, these are really good goaltenders. Like, they're skating just like Joel Hofer and Jordan Binnington are. Yes, maybe they don't have the NHL ice time that obviously the two guys in front of them do, but they could easily slot in there. And the best experience is obviously being a part of that system. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Joel Hofer is on the move since he is an RFA. I don't think that they're going to sign him necessarily, but if they do sign Hofer, then he's going to get paid. Like he's a decent goaltender in the NHL. He's going to want to be paid just like a starter would be. But I do think if the Blues trade Jordan Binnington, they're going to get a lot for their money.
I have a hard time investing big money in goalies. I don't know if it's just a personal thing, but how many times do you see a huge playoff run and the hero is a backup goalie making, 1.3 mil and like, and
Jordan Binnington for the Blues, or Aiden Hill for Vegas, or even Stuart Skinner last year with
Edmonton. Alex Lyon did it a couple years ago. Yeah. So it's like those guys, I don't know. 8 years for that money is just ridiculous. And you're right. The Bruins played it terribly wrong. I love that stuff on Hofer and Binnington. I'm going to keep my eye on that.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, I'm sure you're not following. I mean, I think our goaltending here has been rock solid. I think if you're looking from a prospect standpoint, I think Zarenko has the size, the prototypical size you would want in an NHL number 2 starting goalie. Ellis is a little undersized, but his lateral movement is there. His rebound control, I think, has greatly improved. And I'm big into like the mental aspect of sport, and Colton Ellis is rock solid. You're not, he can let up a bad goal and he'll rattle off 3 breakaway saves right after it. Zarenko got into a little bit of a funk early mid-season this year. Had a tough stretch, and I think over the last 3 years, even when he was backing up Joel Hofer, I think that was kind of the knock on him, is that you get the good Zarenko and brick wall, lights out. He's a goaltender who could stand on his head, and then you sometimes get that little funk with Vadim Zarenko. And so Konowalchuk, I think, played it well. He gave Ellis a few starts in a row. He gave Zarenko the time he needed to get right, and then he's been back, gotten right. Hasn't necessarily gotten all the wins he's deserved, but again, like you heard last week in our episode, he's making 42 saves, and it looks bad. They lose 3-2. He's made 42 saves and he gets the L. So I think I loved hearing what your guys' thoughts on the Blues goaltending, and it makes me think here in Springfield, unfortunately, we probably lose one, if not, both of those guys coming up to you next year. And I would have confidence that they both, Ellis or Zarenko, could be your number 2 behind Binnington or Hofer, whoever that is. But
if there is Binnington or Hofer gets traded this deadline, would you expect Zarenko or would you expect Ellis to be called up?
Well,
I would say, based on experience, who's closer to that level, it would be Zarenko.
Okay.
Who's playing better? Ellis. So that, to me, I think that Zarenko is probably more NHL ready. Ellis is just down here, just like he said, steady Eddie. Just I stop pucking.
I think he. I mean, look,
like ridiculous.
Yeah, I disagree. I think it would be Ellis all the way, honestly, and it hurts to say that because I'll be sad to see him leave because I think right now the Thunderbirds are in a good spot and can really make some damage in the Calder Cup playoffs down here. I think if Ellis was their number 1 goalie from the start of the season, he's an all-star. He's a 9-1 save percentage. I think was a 2.58. I'm pulling that back from what I remember seeing a few weeks ago. Goals against average. I mean, it would have to be Ellis that would get the call up, in my opinion. And that would be a tough hit for down here in Springfield.
Last year he was in the ECHL, right? When we still had Malcolm Subban.
Correct. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
If Binnington does go, and this is a wild, just take on this, do you think they take a pick or do you think they take a prospect? Because I don't think Binnington's going alone.
Oh, you think we trade Binnington plus something else to get something?
Yeah, just kind of smooth it over because you got to think Binnington's toward and I know we don't like to call people old, but he is kind of towards the middle of his. Did he peak? I always ask that. Did he peak? Because he took a long time to get to the NHL. He spent 6-7 years in the AHL, ECHL, OHL.
Yeah,
he spent a lot of time in the minors, and so now this year he's kind of towards the middle of his career, kind of maybe peaking towards the end. Do you kind of sugarcoat that deal with maybe a prospect or a pick? And I would hate to see us just kind of throw away picks just to get away, just to get some salary cap space. But there's a lot of good prospects in the AHL roster that are just begging to be made into something like an NHL star.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up real quick. You guys have a first, a second, a 2/3, a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. And this kind of goes for call-ups too. I think that you either have guys that are monster prospects like Dvorsky, Stenberg, Leo Loof, who I think is exceptional, or you have guys that are so raw that you're not sure what you're going to get yet. And so I would imagine those higher-end guys are untouchable, and the lower-end guys aren't going to draw a lot of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So Mackenzie McEachern would be maybe a middle of the road.
Maybe McEachern again. He's another guy who I think could play NHL minutes, as I'm sure you guys would agree with. So if somebody wants an Alexandrov or McEachern, that would really hurt us. But I think that if it was a throw-in, possibly. But other than that, you're right. Those are probably and Matthew Pekka, the captain. I don't think he's really going anywhere, and I'm not sure what really his value is. Although he is having a career year down here.
He's only on an AHL contract though, so I don't.
Who, Pekka?
Pekka. So I don't know how that works. I'm not exactly sure if the Blues, quote unquote,
I don't think we have
rights to him.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he's on an AHL contract, so I don't think he can move. But
unless
Nikita
you guys made a
is
deal
a name
with another AHL team.
And so we could talk a little bit now here about the guys here in Springfield. Nikita Alexandrov is on his last deal, and Jacob, we talked earlier. He was kind of hurt for a month and a half, maybe 2 months, kind of at the beginning of the season, which I think kind of maybe hindered or kind of maybe shut the door on his window for a call up.
That's like half of your team was injured in November, December, January.
It's been tough.
Playing forwards, it was something.
We had Hunter Skinner playing a forward.
Wow.
So the fact that the team has managed to put themselves in a pretty right now they're in the 6th spot, which is the last spot in the playoffs for our division, is impressive in and of itself. The injuries and even still, Zach Dean is back injured. We just got Leo Loof back. Buchinger, one of the top defensive prospects, is out. He hurt his hand in a fight. But Nikita Alexandrov is on his last year. So is he a guy who is showing out for this is an NHL, an audition to everybody here, or does he get kind of moved at the trade deadline? I'm worried about that because that would be a huge, massive hit for us. But, does he become a throw-in for a team looking for some forward depth, a little bit of a playoff push, 1 year left, get what you can for him because he's gone after this? I don't know if the Blues have plans for him moving forward where you would slot him in. You have a lot of young, similar type of talent, younger behind him. So I don't know if that was kind of his problem last year, is he just kind of got clogged in the roster. Where do you put him?
I don't remember. Did Alexandrov have a decent amount of success when he would dress for the Blues? Or was he kind of like, I don't remember him doing too much.
Yeah, I feel like checking box scores. When he got in, it was the 4th line playing 6, 7, 8 minutes a night. And then that was it, and I real quick, I'll give you one name to keep an eye on for trade purposes that you were mentioning was Dylan Peterson, who is another really young prospect who I think would draw some interest across the league because he's big and he can play and he can score and he can hit. He kind of does it all. But my fear for Alexandrov is what happened with Adam Gaudette. And of course, Gaudette came over in the O'Reilly trade from Toronto, absolutely dominated down here, left for free agency for nothing, and is now in Ottawa. And he's got 13, 14 goals or something for the.
Yeah, he's been playing on the NHL all season.
Yeah. So to me, this seems like Adam Gaudette 2.0 with Alexandrov. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on another team as a free agent and he's playing 3rd line minutes, killing penalties, power play 2, and contributing at the NHL level. So definitely something to keep our eye on there.
I look at it kind of like a Nico Mikkola, because Nico Mikkola couldn't scratch and sniff to get in the lineup at all here with the Blues. I mean, he was in and out of the lineup, and then boom, I think, where does he go? Does he go to
New York first and now Florida? He went
Florida,
to the Rangers in the Tarasenko trade.
Now he's doing well. Now he's playing 2nd line minutes as a defenseman. I mean, great. Cool. I'm happy to see them move on and have success, but it's just like I can't stand seeing like really good talent go to another roster and then have so much success. Again, I want nothing but the best for these guys, but I'm like, damn, they could have helped us.
Yeah.
Do you think, is there something neither Steve or I, we never played hockey at any level, right? So, but is there something to a player that needs a little bit more confidence from a coaching staff to play more than, one game every 2 weeks, 4th line minutes? Like, is Alexandrov a guy that, had he had a little bit more of a consistent role or given a little bit more freedom to play more frequently? Again, I don't know how he would fit in the roster, but does he need more time, more chemistry to kind of get that groove?
I mean, look at Nathan Walker, right? Like he was a premier guy in the AHL. He comes up and I call him like the Vladimir Sobotka of our roster right now. And for those of you who don't know, Vladimir Sobotka. Oh yeah. Wore his heart on his sleeve. Yeah. Played with like he was like 6'7". I think he was like maybe 5'9" on a good day.
Yeah.
But like
with skates
Nathan Walker skates around the ice. He's incredible at back checking and playing that forecheck. He comes in hot. He hits a guy that's probably twice his size. He's really good at playing the puck. He's very, very technical savvy. He plays the puck very well. I'm like, he basically designed his own spot on that roster. Now he's playing 3rd line minutes. He's just as important as a Braden Shen or even a Robert Thomas, because people know what they're getting out of him. He plays gritty, and that's what the Blues need, is somebody who's down to do what they need to do, get their hands dirty. And Nathan Walker, I'm so glad that he's stayed up here and never went down.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sounds like Mackenzie McEachern. I mean, it's like that was my kind of my thing, is like looking at the Blues roster. I'm thinking there's only so many positions. Like they signed, when I saw him sign like Alex Texier, was it Texier?
Yeah. You traded for him.
And I'm thinking to myself, like why? Like McEachern, Alexandrov, like there's at least 3 or 4 bodies that, Nathan Walker, like there are bodies that could do what he did, probably even better for free. That costs you nothing. Yeah. So I feel like they have kind of a logjam down there on that bottom 6 in St. Louis, and that's why the McEacherns and the Alexandrovs aren't able to go up and play big minutes. And so I don't know what those bottom 6 are producing other than what you mentioned about Walker, who we love here in Springfield. I'm happy to see him succeed, but I'm wondering if you guys feel that there's a little bit of a logjam down there at the bottom half of the roster, or no?
Yeah, I think all of the moves last offseason between Texier, bringing in Foxa, bringing in Matthew Joseph, like all of these guys, even with the defensive people we brought in, and P.O. Joseph and Suter, they're all bottom of the lineup guys. And, it's difficult to find top 6 and top 4 defensemen in free agency, or you got to pay a lot for trades. So that's why it's easier to bring those guys in. But it's also, like you said, we maybe had the people already built in. So why go get all these other guys, especially like the Texier trade? I mean, it cost us, I think, a 4th round pick, which isn't a lot, but it's something. Like, you still gave up something for this guy that now I think has been a healthy scratch for at least the last 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear in the offseason we're going through a retool, obviously all of us fans start to wonder, like, what is our team going to look like and how are they going to produce? And then you see us, take the acquisitions of Radek Foxa and, Matthew Joseph, P.O. Joseph, and you're like, well, what? Like, are we going through a retool? Or, like, I just think the Blues organization was kind of slightly confused. I would have loved to have had guys that were in the AHL that we thought were NHL ready prove themselves this year. That way we know kind of where we're standing. Go through that actual retool. Is it a rebuild necessarily? Maybe not. But you have these guys in the AHL that are constantly grinding to get to the NHL. At least let them prove themselves. At least you know where you're at. There's that measuring stick. And I just don't think that Blues organization, we didn't go through that full retool this year. I mean, we're 1 point out, 2 points out of a playoff spot right now. Sure, it's good to see if we're in our retool era and we're still, almost in the playoffs. But you never know what you have until, you're seeing them skate on the ice. You're seeing them, produce with NHL experience. So I would have loved to have done it at a cheaper price. Maybe that's not Doug Armstrong's MO. Maybe it's Alexander Steen's MO. He's the changing of the guards are happening within the next 2 years. I'm curious to see what Steen's going to do.
It reminds me of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're always good enough to make the playoffs and never good enough to actually win. And they never suck bad enough to start at the bottom. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're just always in that tweener stage. And I mean, when I saw Suter, the Suter deal, I'm like, well, there goes Scotty P's minutes, right? There goes Tyler Tucker's minutes. There goes Leo Loof's minutes. And if you're going to retool, I mean, I keep bringing him up. Leo Loof, get that kid up there, put him on the second line, the second pair, and just are going to be growing pains. Yes. Would he, if they did that at the beginning of the year, would he still be there playing consistent minutes in St. Louis? Absolutely. I think he really would. That kid is really fun to watch, super smart, way more advanced mentally than his age. And I kind of thought there's maybe some guys that are just clogging the toilet a little bit and not letting the young guys get up there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Going back to Nikita Alexandrov, my expectation would be that the Blues re-sign him, just because he is an RFA and he has arbitration rights. So he does still kind of have a little bit of a right to go fight for a better salary for himself based on how he does this year. But Sundqvist right now is our third line center, and he's doing okay because he's playing with Zachary Bolduc and it's
Dakota
been kind of a mix of Bolduc and young players that are kind of.
Jacob's a homer. He loves Oscar Sundqvist.
I said he's playing okay.
I would get rid of him for a used stick or a bag of pucks. Like at this point, somebody else needs to take his roster spot.
So, well, here you'll like this then, because here's where I'm going. Is I think they re-sign him with hopefully the anticipation that he becomes the third line center next year, and then Sundqvist can either go down to the fourth line center or.
Jacob Dalibor Dvorsky's your third line center next year.
See, I don't know if that's enough minutes for him. I think they want him to play more.
Of all people to waive, we waived Brandon Saad, not Oscar Sundqvist, because we knew that Oscar Sundqvist was going down immediately. No one's picking him up.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, I believe Dalibor Dvorsky will be there.
I mean, he's because from a minute standpoint, he'll be quarterbacking your second power play unit, and he can kill penalties. And if he's playing with Bolduc, I just think that is absolute home run. I mean, we talk about, it's kind of like with Leo Loof, like we talk about letting these kids grow into it. And Dvorsky at right now, I would say no. The fall, 1,000%. Come October, he should be at the NHL level.
Is he playing center for you guys, or is he playing wing?
Center.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's playing.
He's been penned in second line center from opening day. The lines have changed a little bit, who he's paired with, but he's been the number 2 center since opening night. So I think, you know, he's smart. Even his, you know, quote unquote bad game, you don't go through a game where you're like, he didn't impact it somehow. He's a smart player. He makes the right pass. I agree with you, Steve. I think he'll be right on your second power play line. He'll play special teams, so minutes will be there. You know, but I would expect him to be up.
Yeah, if you want to watch Oscar Sundqvist or Dalibor Dvorsky next year, it's going to be Dvorsky.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, he's the interesting thing is, and I don't know if this is the Blues or the Thunderbirds or both, but they have this influx this year of players from overseas, mostly Sweden, and they all played in like the Swedish league, so they're all playing against grown men. And Marcus Silvegaard, who eventually left the team, they kind of terminated his contract, but he was playing great hockey. Alec Koskamaki, Otto Stenberg came over and just stepped right in, and boom. And so for a while there was Dvorsky, Kaskamaki, Silvegaard. Now it's kind of Dvorsky, Kaskamaki, Stenberg. So the nice thing that Connor Walchuk's doing is he's been playing like McEachern, Alexandrov, Pekka together with Luff, right? Matt Luff was a massive addition for us midseason. He's just crushing it too. But he always kept these young guys together, and like he's got them like playing power play minutes. You know, 3 minutes left in a tie game, he's sending out 3 kids that are all under the age of 22. It's like, and they look like they belong.
They belong. They're not lost. They belong.
So yeah, that's one of the things we discuss is like, okay, you played at BC, that's great. You played in, you know, for the Regina Pats, awesome. You're playing against other 16,
people
17,
your
18-year-old,
age,
right? And you go overseas and you're banging with 35-year-old, you know, meatheads, beer drinkers. Like that's a whole different thing. And I think that when it gets to the AHL level, that's where I see the biggest difference in terms of, are you ready to play or aren't you? It's usually those European guys that can step right in and make it happen compared to, you know, your kid from the Big East.
So were you surprised at all at Otto Stenberg coming over and just having an absolute, you know, like the adaptation to his game? Just there was no carryover.
So I don't know. If you asked me at the beginning of the season, I would have said absolutely. But after seeing, and I even mentioned Samuel Johannesson on the back end playing defense, Simon Robertson playing mostly third, fourth line minutes, but all these guys have just stepped in and they just go. And we've been talking about like, are they playing a different style than the other 3 lines? Like, all right, you 3 lines do this. You 3, you go do whatever the hell it is you do over there in Europe, and just make it happen. It's like got that feel to it. But no, Stenberg's he's been awesome, and he's never stopped smiling, and he's just, like I said, it's seamless watching him step in and play with these guys, and again, play with guys bigger and older and stronger than him, and he's just like pays no mind. He just goes out there and does it. It's awesome. It's great to see.
And Stenberg's playing great 2 ways as well. His back check, you know, getting back on defense, which has been impressive. That is probably something that surprised me the most as a rookie. You kind of come in and you know, I don't know if some guys just think we got to just focus on our offense, that everything else will come. He came in and from right away, he was paired up with Hugh McGing a lot, right? Like early when he got here, and Hugh McGing was the center, Stenberg, and then the third forward has been
Dylan Peterson.
Door. Dylan Peterson, he's hurt now, you know, so it's been a bit of a revolving door with them. But you know, and I don't know if that's like the Hugh McGing leadership of, you're just like, Hugh McGing's kind of like our Nathan Walker. You're just always hustling, gritty, doing what you need to do. You might not be scoring all the goals you need to, but you're in the right spot, you're making the right plays, you're hustling, you're covering other guys defensively, you're lifting sticks. And Stenberg has just he's followed, I think, Hugh McGing's lead from that standpoint. So I wouldn't be surprised. I kind of feel like maybe more than Kaskamaki, who's been here all year, Stenberg might be a little bit more NHL ready come next year, along with Dalibor Dvorsky. But there are a lot of good prospects down here, in my opinion.
I'm glad you mentioned Hugh McGing because it seriously 5'8", and he went through a massive goal drought. And during that goal drought, he probably had the check of the game 4 or 5 times, just attacking guys physically at that size. And it's like, oh, he's like, all right, well, I'm cold. I'm not going to score. Let me at least go out there and hit somebody and kill some penalties, which was like great. That's the model, right? Like if you're an undersized player, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at Nathan Walker's, Hugh McGing's. Like those are the guys you want to be like. So I think they're following that same mold.
Just still being impactful.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned him too, because when I saw him skate with all the roster, they had everybody coming up. They do like a week worth of practice. You know, they do those little minor league games, and then everybody goes their separate ways. Hugh McGing was one of those players that I was watching the most whenever they would have those open skates, and that dude was fast as shit. And I'm not going to say this because I'm a homer and I love the St. Louis Blues, but I was ready to have him up with the big boys. He was skating with Braden Shen. Who else was he skating with? Nathan Walker was also out there, and I was like, holy shit, who is this kid? Obviously, we don't really know too much about him, but like, I'm just seeing it based off of the events that I'm watching, right? And he's skating hard. He's heavy on the forecheck. He's out beating everybody in the NHL. Because they do this little drill where they put the goal in the corner, and they basically kind of make a pyramid, and it's 3 guys and 2 defensemen, and they're trying to take the puck away and whatever. And that dude was grinding the entire time. Then they're doing, they're skating the length of the ice back and forth. He was always the first one down there, first one back. Like that dude was putting in so much work. And I'm so glad that you mentioned him, because that dude's work ethic, it speaks for itself, right? Like you mentioned Nathan Walker, that dude skates like his last days tomorrow. And I can't wait to see what Hugh McGing does, obviously for AHL, but for the NHL roster too.
At 26 years old, Hugh McGing. Worth your eyes for sure.
Who else do you think the Blues have big aspirations for or big plans for in the future? And is there a vibe up there that like, are you guys just like, give us Dvorsky, let's go? Is there anybody else that you guys are?
You want me to tee this up for you, Jacob, or no?
Sure. I'm interested just to see what you say. I don't know.
I'm going to be very surprised to see if Jordan Kyrou stays with the NHL roster for the next 2 years, because what his expectation is and what we're getting from him. Again, yes, he leads our team in goals scored, but I think his ceiling, was set higher than what I feel like he has what has a possibility of getting to, right? I think we thought we were signing our next Tarasenko. And obviously Tarasenko kind of underdelivered. I do think he was a really good player for us. But I think Jordan Kyrou, his mental, what happens between his ears, I feel like is what is going to fault him in staying with the St. Louis Blues roster. I think his puck presence, I think he tries to be a lot smoother with the puck than he is. He tends to turn the puck over in the neutral zone way too many times. He tries to pass more than he shoots. And I think that mentality is going to end up taking his spot away from the Blues. So,
well, I'll start by talking about what Dakota just said. Jordan Kyrou has a full no trade clause that starts next year.
Oh boy!
So if the Blues are going to move on for him, it has to be either this deadline or I think before July 1st. I think that's when the new kind of season kicks in. So it's going to have to be before then. Otherwise, full no trade for the next couple of years.
Have fun, Dakota.
All right, yeah. You're gonna.
I'm out here on I'm on an
island. We talk about all the guys at the AHL. People like Dvorsky and Stenberg. People know Kaskamaki has been one that I've been noticing, especially after the World Juniors. He did well there. There's a lot of other guys. That Adam Jecko that we drafted this last season. He's not playing with you. He's still in the juniors, but he's like a 6'5" centerman, like just huge. So I have high hopes for him. But the big one that we haven't talked about, and I think Dakota might have slipped his name in earlier, is Jimmy Snuggerud. And as far as what I've read online, I always say like what I heard or but I don't have any connections to any of this. I just read a lot of it. But the expectation is that the Minnesota Gophers make it to the Final Four, or the Frozen Four, which is conveniently in St. Louis this year. He goes and wins the Frozen Four at Enterprise Center, and then just stays with the St. Louis Blues after that. So that's the expectation for Jimmy Snuggerud. Hopefully, if he's making the actual Frozen Four and winning the championship, he might get 4 or 5 games for the Blues before playoffs, and then we'll have to just see if the Blues are in playoffs or not. But yeah, that's the big one, and a lot of people are excited for Dvorsky, but seeing that Jimmy Snuggerud's going to be top 3 in Hobie Baker if he doesn't win it, but he'll be top 3. So I mean, you're getting a top 3 for the Heisman of college hockey is a pretty big uptick in. Well, we should be an uptick because you see Scott Perunovich also, but well, that's an outlier.
Yeah.
Well, Jacob, if he stays, let's say the Blues are a 7 seed, 8 seed, 6 seed, and he stays, where is he playing? Who are you playing him with? Because he's a right winger, right?
Yeah, he's a winger. He's gonna have to slot into the third line. The problem is we just don't have enough solid centermen. Like Shet, we tried Buchnevich at center at the beginning of the year, and that didn't work. It hardly worked last year, so I don't know why we tried it this year. But Montgomery changed that real quick when he got here. So right now you're looking at Thomas locked in at 1, Braden Shen at this point locked in at 2. At 3 is Oscar Sundqvist, and I think everybody would rather have somebody else there. Dylan Holloway has played center at some points in his career. Bolduc, I think, played center down with you guys some, but he's not played any center in the NHL. So I don't know how you throw Bolduc at center for playoffs if you're not going to play him there in the regular season. So I don't know. Maybe that's hard. That's really hard to fit him. It's almost like you got to put Jake Neighbors on the 4th line just because he's a big body and he'll just run into people.
Would you be happy? You want Jake Neighbors playing more, though, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I guess
I think Dakota's sort of on it. The Sundqvist and Braden Shen, it's a tough spot because you're saying you lack centerman, and Dakota is saying, well, with the centerman we do have sucks. So it's like, so what do you do you just keep the suck, or do you kind of?
Yeah, that's definitely the weakness of the team. And Braden Shen's having a solid year, but I would love for Braden Shen to be the 3rd line center, but we just don't have a 2nd line center. I do think right now, like the top line is Buchnevich, Thomas, and Jake Neighbors. Line 2 is Dylan Holloway, Braden Shen, and Jordan Kyrou. Those 6 are kind of locked in. Mm-hmm. I want to say the 3rd line right now is Bolduc, Sundqvist, and I think it's been Matthew Joseph the last few games, but sometimes they'll throw Texie in there. So I guess that's where Jimmy Snuggerud goes in. But then you're like, all right, I have this really good prospect in Zachary Bolduc, and I have this really good prospect in Jimmy Snuggerud, and we're going to have Oscar Sundqvist center him. So like maybe that's where someone with a little bit more skill like Nikita Alexandrov needs to come up and play that spot. But then if that's the case, you got to do that sooner rather than later.
Do that sooner. Yeah. Or you just send them all down to Springfield and help us with our playoff.
If the Blues don't make the playoffs, I really hope the Blues make the playoffs because they have not made the playoffs in the history of the Blues Forum podcast. So now I jump on bandwagons, and I was looking at your guys' record and kind of where you are, and I'm like, hopefully the bandwagon I can jump on is Springfield this year. That would be nice.
I'll say this, and Steve and I have talked about this right now. And in the AHL, you kind of every 48 hours something can change, and players get called up, and players get hurt, and everything changes. As it stands right now, Springfield you don't want to play Springfield in a playoff series. I think they're finally getting healthy, and solid goaltending. Since they've gotten Nikita Alexandrov back, they're playing almost like 750, 800 hockey as far as a win percentage. Like they're really going on a tear. They're hot. And, when you had Nikita Alexandrov, Zach Dean, when they were out, it was, they were good for 2 weeks, bad for 2 weeks, good for 2 weeks. They're on, what is it, Steve, now 6 or 7 game point streak again?
Yeah. 7.
So even when, they lose in a shootout to Hartford this past weekend, you're getting a point. You take Providence, who's third in our division, you take them to a shootout, you win. They're a dangerous team to play right now in the playoff, in my opinion, how it stands right now. And so, they have a good mix of really skilled young players and veteran guys like Pekka, McEachern, Matt Luff, Hugh McGing, who lead by example. When you need a timely goal, Pekka's been there time and time again. Mackenzie McEachern's doing all the dirty stuff. He's finishing his checks and setting the example. You got guys
Sam
like
Bennett
Schooneman.
And Bennett.
What's that? Sam Bitten. Yep. Yeah. He
Bitten.
just broke his eye, so he's
oh god
got the fishbowl.
Jeez.
Yeah. He won the fight, but he got one good shot against him in the orbital phone situation. But I mean, to Matt's point, and they just made 2 trades too. They traded LaFerriere and they got Corey Andonovsky. They traded it basically an ECHL guy for this guy, Cale Kessie. And Andonovsky's a sandpaper kind of guy. Cale Kessie is 6'4" and averages 100+ penalty minutes a year. And Sam Bitten trains with UFC fighters in the offseason. So the beauty of what they're doing is that when they get to the playoffs, do you want to play? How do you want to play? You want to play physical? Cool. Sam, Cale Kessie, you're in. You want to play skill? You're the faster team. Okay, now we got Tanner Dickinson, and we have some other, smaller, more shifty, speedy forwards. So they're in a really interesting spot now, heading into hopefully as a playoff run to where they can, however you want to play it, they can do it. Let's make it happen. And yeah, it was rough there when Sam Bitten might've been over skis a little bit, playing third line minutes, playing power play when everybody was hurt. But now that everybody's healthy, you look at it and you go, well, who do you sit? And even a guy like Tanner Dickinson, it's I know he had a nasty injury, missed a year and a half. Last year was kind of off and on. All of a sudden, the last, 3-4 weeks, it's man, look at this. You got something here, and Zach Dean, I missed a lot of time, and it's unfortunate how far he's fallen on the depth chart, but it's only a matter of time till he gets it back again. So, you can roll out Dean and Dickinson against a fast team. You can roll out Bitten and Kessie or Andonovsky against a team with meat. They can kind of take you on anyway. And that's what I think is going to be really exciting. And yeah, if they're a 6 seed, 7 seed, you don't want to play them. You really don't. If you're a 2 or a 3 seed.
I was going to ask you guys about Zach Dean. I think Matt last episode mentioned possible ECHL, and I know he's been hurt a lot, and mentioned kind of following down the depth chart, mostly because of injuries. But is he that far down at this point?
In his defense, Matt didn't mention it. A fan ranter to our show mentioned it.
Oh, okay.
Reading the fan rant, but
I'll take this. I'm probably higher on Zach Dean than Steve is. I still remember before his call up last year, Zach Dean went on this 2-week heater. He had a hat trick on Military Appreciation Night, going back last year. And that is the Zach Dean that's in my mind. He's played 10 games this year. Yeah. So it's just I don't know. I don't know how he plays. I don't know. I'm not sitting a Dylan Peterson for him. I'm not, if you look at, again, so we almost, when Zach Dean is healthy, we almost have too many centers. So you have Matthew Pekka, top line center, Dalibor Dvorsky, second line center. They're not going anywhere. Hugh McGing, third line center. He's pairing with Stenberg and they're rolling. So you keep that still. So it's all right, Zach Dean, you're playing fourth line center. And at that point now you're partnering him up with Sam Bitten or, I think at the time when he was playing, this was before the trade, you had Newkirk in there, you had Robertson before he got hurt again. So you're kind of just tough to find real meaningful minutes for Zach Dean where he's actually part of the offense and not just out there kind of giving everybody else the breather shift almost, if that makes sense. He really hasn't done anything this year. And I think what I was saying last week is it almost like one of those, lost seasons where you're just kind of like, tough injuries, we get back. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what his contract situation is, but are you just, he's kind of put himself in a spot where I don't see him making the Blues roster. Again, you talk about all these other young guys. Had he been healthy, maybe he's your third line center this year, if he kind of was playing right. But
yeah, 2 years ago, you would have, or even last year, you probably would have said he was right on par with Bolduc. Like him and Bolduc
right.
were on the
Zacks
on the same timeline. So
he's just at the start of the year, I kind of had Bolduc and Dean again similar on the bubble. Are they going to be up and down guys all year long? Bolduc got the call up right away. Dean got hurt after the first weekend, and that was lengthy. And then he just got back and got hurt again. So right now he's listed day to day. We know that means nothing in hockey. So I kind of just feel like it's a bit of a lost season for Dean, but I still have that superstar trending of Zach Dean before the call up last year, where he was just on a 2-week heater, and I'd like to see him get back to that. I'm hopeful. Hopefully it's next year with the Thunderbirds.
he does have one more year on his entry level deal.
That's good. Okay. That's good, because I think he deserves another crack at it. And yeah, I mean, Matt said it really nice there. But the other thing too is, like, I look at a guy like Drew Callen. Drew Callen is a bona fide AHL third, fourth line center. Take that for what it is. But he is a AHL third line, fourth line, penalty kill, power play, dominate the faceoff, never makes a dumb play, smart, savvy. Does he score a bunch of goals? No. Is he lightning quick? No. And he's not playing. I mean, he hasn't played in a month because of that center at depth, or that depth at center. And I mean, they're moving centers to the wings because we have so many. So yeah, I don't know where he goes. I don't know where Dean goes, unfortunately. And that's what the question was brought up to us. Are they better off putting him in the ECHL, playing top line minutes and just scoring 10 goals a game? I don't know. I mean,
we could definitely trade you, Sonny. He
actually plays on the wings.
Bring one of those guys up.
yeah, bring him up. Yeah, no, I think Devo's close. Dvorsky, I'm not sure he's there yet. Dean, to me, unfortunately, yeah, as Matt said, it's kind of unfortunate, because I can't imagine where he would be in March right now if he had a full season under his belt. Yeah. Good or bad, I just assume it would have been. I assume we wouldn't have seen him after, 4 Nations. Really, I mean, I would imagine he would have been up with you guys doing his thing. So it's unfortunate.
There was a large time of like massive Sundqvist hate, where I think it was like right around when we sent Saad down and terminated his contract. It was like, okay, Sundqvist is next. Yeah. And then we've been playing okay. And part of that is the third line's been okay. And so the Sonny hate has gone away again. But again, as soon as we just lost to Dallas, if we lose to LA on Wednesday and then Anaheim on Friday, it's probably going to be, well, let's get rid of Sundqvist and maybe call up Nikita Alexandrov, or I think Texier. They've put Texier at center here and there, or even Matthew Joseph has played center on the fourth line a couple times. So maybe you give one of them more. But he's also, like, Sundqvist is getting first line power play minutes too, which is bizarre. I mean, his job is literally to stand in front of the net. That's it. But yeah, it's like you put him and Jake Neighbors and just have both of them just go to the front of the net. But that's still, there's got to be someone better than Oscar Sundqvist that we could be putting out here.
If it's not Alexandrov, make it Humagang.
Really. Yeah, all right. Could you imagine that? Him and Walker on the same line? Ooh,
I don't know if I don't know if you put them on the same line, but you need third line minutes.
They would do it. They would,
right?
And you wouldn't even see him coming. That's the best part. You wouldn't even be able to see him coming at 5'9" or whatever it is. Yeah. That's funny. So we'll see. Well, this has been great, guys. I don't know. Do you guys have anything? Anything else? We should do this more than once a year, I feel like, because this was a good time.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed this. But yeah, no, we really appreciate your time. And good luck the rest of the way. Do you guys have any last questions for us regarding the prospect pool? Or
you covered all the guys that I mean, I kind of figured we'd get to them all at some point, but yeah, you kind of covered all the guys that I want to talk about between the big prospects, but then also I knew we were going to talk about Nikita Alexandrov a lot, but Leo Loof and Matthew Kessel and that Samuel Johannesson, is that
Yes.
he was on my bold predictions at the beginning of the year where I said he was going to play 20 NHL games. I just expected, with the lack of right-handed shots of Blues defensemen, I was like, if we get Parayko or Falk who are out long term, I'm like, it's got to be Kessel already up, and then I thought he would be next. So that was my bold prediction. But
yeah, he's been playing top line AHL minutes since game 1.
There you go.
As a rookie, without even batting an eye. Just and again, it's that SHL Swedish league where you're playing against grown men when you're 20, but just stepped right in. And I get worried with those guys with the size of the ice, because I always think as somebody who never played, I'm like, well, they're on a huge sheet of ice. How does it change when you get down here? For defensemen, I imagine it's actually easier. They're got less ice to cover. So he's just stepped right in and just,
he had a big goal the other night too. He had a big goal.
He did.
Yeah, he's playing well. Buchinger, he has been playing well. He just hurt his hand.
Beating the bag off of somebody
right now. Yeah.
That Rutger McGroarty, that kid that was, I don't know, drafted by Winnipeg and then threw a hissy fit, whatever that situation was, and Buchinger beat the bag off him and broke his hand. It's fun to see.
Well, that would be, I mean, if he turns out to be an NHL player, that'd be another kind of steal. He's a 6th round pick, that Johannesson of Columbus, apparently. But like Tyler Tucker, former 7th round pick, like that'd be another good defensive depth steal that we have.
I mean, I would say I'm not an NHL scout or anything, but I feel like the future is bright in St. Louis. I think there's a lot of good talent here in Springfield, and I have confidence they're learning and being coached the right way. I have confidence in the leadership, guys who have been in the NHL. You know, the defensemen are really learning from Scott Harrington, who spent multiple years in the NHL. So there's a good leadership group, a good mix of veteran guys. The talent is phenomenal. And like we said, who knows what happens at the trade deadline if a guy gets thrown in a deal. But I'd have to think if that's the case, you're getting a nice equitable return as well. So I feel like the future, I know it stinks now, as you know, up in Blues country, you're kind of in that middle of the road. We talked about you're not good enough to really get excited about a playoff push. You're not bad enough to get excited about another top prospect, kind of just there.
For the 3rd year in a row.
For the 3rd, but I don't know. I don't like saying this as a Springfield fan, because it means that we kind of get depleted, but I feel like you got reinforcements coming. You know, you've got a lot of skill, a lot of talent if they continue to progress, and you know, it'll be.
That's what we're excited about. Honestly, we talk about this all the time on the podcast. It's like how much depth we actually have in our roster, right? If the one guy goes out, we know that the replacement may not be as NHL caliber as we think, but at least we know we got somebody coming with a huge amount of skill that can add some sort of offensive threat that we know to be true. And so, as NHL, obviously as St. Louis Blues fans, we're excited as hell. Like watching you guys have success, that means we're essentially going to have success whenever they decide to, make the moves to come up to the NHL roster. So we're excited. We're tickled as hell, and we're excited to see some of the guys that you guys have been watching every day come up and have some success in the NHL roster.
We are too, because that's what we want from the guys too. That's what we want the boys to hit their dream and make the NHL. So
it feels so weird to be doing a hockey podcast, and Dakota just said he's tickled.
I don't know what's going on up there in Wisconsin.
I will say this roster right now, and I think Doug Armstrong has done this purposely, is every single forward right now on the Blues roster, except for Radek Faksa, is signed through next year. So there's really not a whole lot of room for a forward to come up. Same thing with the defensemen. Every single defenseman is signed at least through next year, with the except for Ryan Suter, who has just come out and said he'd love to come back. So at this point, there's going to have to be some creativity from Doug and Alexander Steen if we decide, or if they decide Dvorsky's ready, or Stenberg's ready, or Snuggerud's ready when he comes, or any of those others. But as far as like next year, Springfield should be fairly safe. I don't think you're going to be missing very many players. But then after that, like you might have a whole new team that you've never heard of in 2 years. So
well, that's how we started this year. I mean, I don't know how you felt, Steve, but like we knew of Dalibor Dvorsky, right? But we didn't know much about any of these guys. They're all coming over from Sweden.
Peterson, Kaskamaki. I mean, Robertson, Johannesson. All of a sudden, there was just all this Swedish. We're just like, I don't know who any of these guys are. I don't know which one's Sam, which one's Simon, which one's Carl, which one's Otto. Like, which one's which? And then some NCAA guys thrown in there too. So, like Matt said, it was a very new roster this year. And the nice thing was you still had Pekka, you still had Alexandrov, you still had McGing,
McEachern back,
Kessel, you know what I mean? Tucker for a little while. So
goalies was secure.
It's been fun. The goalies have been good, and we know Will Cranley's right behind him too, who's playing some pretty good time in the ECHL too. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Now, when does Armstrong's passing it off to Steen at some point, right?
2027,
end of next season.
So is that when all the contracts expire?
Yes.
Oof. So why would he do that?
I don't. I mean, you're looking at.
Good luck, kids. See you later.
Yeah,
I'm out.
After that season, like the big ones are signed. So Kyrou, Thomas, Shen, still, and Buchnevich are all signed after that. But as far as forwards, the only other one is Jake Neighbors. Everyone else is gone after that.
I was going to say, you guys had like Jake Neighbors isn't going to go anywhere.
That's Jake Neighbors' last year of his extension, but he's signed through that. So Joseph Holloway will need to be re-signed. Texier, Sundquist, Torpchenko, hopefully re-signed.
Love that guy too.
Yeah. Walker, hopefully re-signed. And then same thing, the defenseman. You got Falk, still Krug, and Pareko through then, but Philip Broberg will have to be re-signed. Cam Fowler, if he'll be 35 at that point. Nick Leddy will be 35 at that point. I don't think he's coming back. So, yeah. And I'm sure there's going to be some re-signings, this offseason. Maybe you try to get ahead of Broberg and Holloway and get them signed now. Because July 1st, they'll be eligible to be re-signed. So maybe you get ahead of it and get that done while Doug's still here and Steen. But yeah, I don't know. But that's how they built the roster.
Got a question for Steve and Matt. Hypothetical, obviously. Mm-hmm. If we were to move a goaltender, do you still feel like your playoff threat is as strong? And if so, which goaltender do you feel like can lead you to the promised land?
I'll go first on this one, Matt. I think in that situation, it would be Colton Ellis, just because he has been the most rock solid this entire year. I think the weird thing in this league, and I don't know, maybe a lot of people who don't follow it don't realize, but the schedule is always really strange. Like you'll play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 in a row, and then you won't play again until the following Friday, and then Sunday, and then so there's really only weekend games. So you're playing 3 and 3. Or you're playing, 3 and 4 games. Like right now, they're playing 3 games in 5 days. So all on the road. So right, is it 3 or is it 4 and 5 games?
They've got Tuesday, Wednesday in Charlotte.
Because we had Saturday. They played Friday, Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's 4 games in 6 days. Mm-hmm. So what's going to change? So when it comes to the goalies, you're like, okay, well, who's playing better now? Okay, let's say it's Ellis. Okay, Ellis is going to play Friday, Sunday. Zarenka will play Saturday and give him the night off. Like that's kind of the alternate path. When the playoffs start, it's more NHL like. So it's, play, skip a day, play, skip a day. So there's more rhythm to it. So how do you? I'm always a belief in a 2 goalie system. Well, you can't win that way. It's like, okay, well, they said you couldn't win with a running quarterback either in the NFL. And well, what do you know? It's 2025. It can be done.
Weird.
So, I think that where they are now, it would be sort of an alternate as they go. I don't think either guy is really prepared to play, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday in the playoffs and take all the games. Mm-hmm. So if anybody could do it, it would be Ellis, but I'm going to be fascinated to see how that goalie switching and tandem shakes out.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think I think if one goalie were to be called up, like I said earlier, I think it is Ellis. And I think if it is Ellis, I think that makes us a little bit less threatening from an opponent's standpoint. I think Ellis is the guy who will have to lead in a Calder Cup playoff. I think his experience playing in I forget what tournament that was. It wasn't I don't think it was the U19 World Juniors with Dvorsky, but he was somewhere overseas in that same time playing.
So Spangler Cup or something like
Spangler,
that.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah, the Spangler Cup. So I think he also has a little bit of experience playing with Canada on my shoulders, where Z hasn't really had that yet. And where Z stands out, he's Joel Hofer's number 2. He's Malcolm Subban's number 2. He's Colton Ellis's number 2. And I think the advantage of having a Z as your 2 is there isn't really much of a fall off. But when Z is the 1, there's a little bit of that inconsistency with his play. Sort of what I see.
And if that was to happen, and I don't remember the timeline, but I would hope it'd be a little organized. I remember the Thunderbirds pulling Garrett Sparks off of the scrap heap to just come in and be that 31, 32-year-old backup goalie to a kid if you needed it. So I don't think they would go right to Will Cranley. I think they would try to find a, the Hamburglar or somebody who's just like, you're like, oh, that guy, I forgot he even played. Like some guy that you
had that month of fame in the NHL.
Right, exactly.
Bring him back.
That's what I thought was Will Cranley was just going to come in and just be whatever buffer Vadim Zarenko if he was the person that was left behind, to be. So I was curious.
Yeah. We'll see how it all shakes out. So, well, guys, this was a lot of fun. We really appreciate the time. This is great. We could really do it all night, but it is a school night for Matt and I. And
I'm a teacher too. So
yeah.
AP meeting in the morning too. So yeah.
I think you're getting a little cold though, Jacob. You might have to.
I know. I'm like, I should probably just do it virtual, I guess. But either way, I still got to be up and do a meeting at 8:15 in the morning.
Well, good luck to you. Good luck to you, both of you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we're going to be following, obviously, what's going on up there. You guys, if you have you want to know what's going on down here, obviously hit us up anytime. We're happy to talk about it, go over it, because this was good. This was good for our people and your people, I think. Yeah. So we got to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, maybe we could do a playoff show if both teams are fortunate enough to be in the playoffs. We'll do a playoff show.
That would be sweet. I would love that. We need the Blues to make the playoffs, but I would love.
All right. Well, Jacob, Dakota, thank you guys so much. Thanks to all the listeners for the Blues Fan Forum for putting up with us, minor leaguers for the last hour plus. But we really appreciate it. This was a good time, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Take it easy, guys. We'll see you.
See ya.